Happy Wednesday. Well, it's another day, another week, and I'm coming to you today because my topic is grief. Um, there's no one over 50 years old who has not experienced some level of grief, whether it be the loss of a loved one, your pet, friendships, uh, just, man, I lost, I lost my mother in 2018 after her battle with dementia and Alzheimer's, and that was tough. It was tough. It was not a surprise because once someone gets that diagnosis, and just folks will tell you there's no coming back from that, right? But the whole time I was going through it, I was thinking, well, but how will we know when it's the end, right? Like, I knew 100%, 1,000%, my mother had said it often. She was a nurse, that she did not want to be in a nursing home. She didn't want to be in a nursing home. She didn't want to be in a nursing home. She had worked in nursing homes. She had worked as a nurse's aide. She did not want to be in a nursing home. And sadly, my brothers and I did not have a choice. And she died, spending her last days being in full-time nursing care. That's something that has, when somebody tells you, like if I sit here right now and say, hey, I don't want to live in Las Vegas, which actually I did say that back in October. I don't want to live in Las Vegas. And yet in January, when I left my job, guess what I did? In February, I moved to Las Vegas for a multitude of reasons. I'm just saying that because, the things that we say we don't want to have happen, life has other things that happen to us. So that's just the way that is. Where am I grieving? My grief was stirred up last Wednesday, when I found out that a dear friend, Mr. Arthur Wright, had passed away. Mr. Wright was my mom's age, so he would be, he'll be 8. His birthday is 2 days after my daughter's. So May 20th. 1940, he was born. And in 1996, when I started my journey in education, Mr. Wright was one of those just friendly colleagues, black man who worked at the school that I was working at. He cleaned our buildings. He made sure we felt secure and safe as humans living on that campus, students and adults. And always, I remember one time I went to his little area where he hung out, where the little secret cave. You don't know where the maintenance and the facilities folks, where they dwell, right? Where's their office? And one time I went to one of the spaces that he had, and he just had his space was wallpapered with the accolades of the black students at that school. Mr. Wright had come up from Eastern Shore, Maryland, to work at the school back in the 60s. And I would ask him, I would say, why did you come here? How did you end up in Princeton, New Jersey? And he would just laugh and tell the story of his sister inviting him to come up, and him getting this job and working with these other black men who, Jake and there's another one. I don't know. But I would always say to him, I was like, but I didn't know them. Jake and the other guy had passed on before I got to that school in New Jersey. But the conversations that I would have with Mr. Wright were just, I could talk to him about anything, right? He was always fascinated by my faith. He would praise me because I could back my car into my parking spot. Um, he had very, what today, by today's measures, would be considered very, male, chauvinistic type ways or whatever. But I didn't grow up with my father. And Mr. Wright was probably just one of these men that I respected, who always treated me with kindness. And after 16 years of us working together, I remember when it was coming up on his 40th year that he had been at the school, I was like, we have to do something. What are they doing for him? And blah, blah, blah. And so got the students together and we created this event, this program. And we sent him to see his beloved Philadelphia Eagles. We got a car and man, I'm telling you, the smile on his face, the joy of seeing this black man be honored at a school that he had given so much to was amazing. And he wasn't leaving, at that point. That's 40 years. He ended up staying at the school another 9 years after that. And we had another experience where I had heard that he and another guy, Mac, who worked in our dining hall, had not been to the Statue of Liberty, had not been to New York City. Man, what? So I was at that time, I was running a summer academic program. And during that program, we had students who lived on campus, boarding students, and we would take trips on the weekends. And one of the trips, you have to take them to New York City if you're in Princeton. And so I made sure that Mr. Wright and Mr. Mack were able to come with us. I'm telling you, up until he had his stroke, he would talk to me about how he and Mr. Mack would talk on the phone well into their retirement and talk about that trip to New York. And that's my purpose for living. My purpose for living is to help have the best life that I can have. And while I'm doing that, to also share that joy with other people. See what other memory I wanted to share about Mr. Wright. When we brought the black students back to campus during reunion weekend, and to bring him into that space. I was like, every time we have this black affinity space, we need to bring Mr. Wright, because too often the schools that I was affiliated with, I worked in my 25 years of working in independent schools, did not have a lot of legacy as it related to black people working in these schools. And I think a lot of times we miss the opportunity because we've got people working and cleaning our buildings who have done it for decades. And Mr. Wright and Jake and the other guy, and I don't mean to be disrespectful again, I just did not work with him, were the ones who they knew the kids. They saw them. They gave the kids the rides. They would give them the shoes. If they needed a pair of sneakers or they needed something. Arthur Wright was one of the leaders because he had been trained by Jake and those other men to honor and support these kids. And he was raised that way. He would tell me about his family, his siblings. I'd never met a person who, like I said, he was old enough to be my father, but he still talked to his siblings all the time. He talked to his siblings on the phone. And one who lives over in England, I believe, and he would call him, I want to say his name was Brother John. And it just, for a black woman who oftentimes was the only black educator in that school, to have Mr. Wright and other Black folks who were there, had been there, to see me and to support me and to honor my work, was a lot of how I survived that 16 years working in that school. And my last years, I actually got to live across the hall from him in the dorm. And that was really cool, because that meant that I could see him if he was on his way to church on a Sunday, or I was on my way to church, or whatever. That just bonded us even more. And so I was actually surprised and, again, honored when the year that I decided to leave that school, he too decided to leave. And he was at 49 years, not 50. He could have stayed another year. Everything was cool. He was easing into his life, where he was. But he decided in the year that I left that he too was leaving. And once I left, I worked for a year in Baltimore, and I would make it my business to get down to the Eastern Shore to hang out with Mr. Wright. And again, it's I think it was Toni Morrison who talked about when your kids walk in the room, you should just light up because you're happy to see them. And I know as a single mother, I didn't always externally or emote my joy of seeing my children, because I was tired and I was working and I was grinding and I was trying my best to give them the best life that I could give to them. But Mr. Wright, he would light up when he saw me. And he was just so honored. And I would say, like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go somewhere? And we went to the Baltimore Blacks and Wax Museum. I would always try to take him. I promised him that I was going to take him to walk across the bridge in Selma. And I didn't do that. Just life circumstances and that we didn't get to do that together. But we did. We both went to Obama's inauguration, and it was cold. And I'm telling you, it was just so nice to come back to the school after that experience, however we got there and however we got back and whatever, to be able to have someone to talk about and unpack what that monumental, historic experience was like, and to speak to someone who had lived through the 60s, who had lived through Dr. King and Brother Malcolm and all of the folks, Medgar Evers, and all of the violence and the progress of the civil rights movement, right? To talk to him. And I remember asking him, I was like, so Mr. Wright, did you follow Brother Malcolm? He was like, no, Miss Grace. The order of the day and the time was about staying safe, right? And they weren't supposed to be down there being radical and things like that. And you get in trouble if you do that kind of thing, right? You didn't take time off from work to be doing the March on Washington. and it put a different perspective. And he just was so giving and so just such a good person in my life. And I remember when I found out he had a stroke, and I called him and I talked to him, and his speech was kind of slurred. And actually just before the end of his life, before he became an ancestor, I did get to call him and just tell him how much I loved him, and to thank him for being that person. For me, for my kids, just to... He's not a perfect man. That's what he would always say, well, I made my mistakes, Miss Grace. I know. We all have. appreciate that. So, how do we recover? Please, in the comments, if you have a story to share about someone who means something to you, please feel free. Share it, think about it, write about it, journal about it, and grieve. I've taken this week to do just that. Because not since losing my mother, and I think about the fact that I feel like I lost my mom 10 years before she died, because dementia takes away their ability to talk. And I would go as often as I could. I would go on my breaks and I would go and check on my mom. And I could just see it just deteriorating, right? Until she got to the point where, like, not only could she not talk, she didn't know who I was, right? And then I have some, it sucks. Let's just say that. I'm going to get past this. So if you have stories, if you want to share, people talk about their grandmothers and things like that. And I wanted to make this video as a Black woman. Now I'm 60, but over 50 years old, to say that my grief, my life matters. I'm going to be an ancestor. My t-shirt says, my ancestors are standing strong behind me. I stand on their shoulders every single day. I am trying my best. This podcast, whatever you want to call this, YouTube channel, whatever, I'm still figuring out that piece, is about living our best lives over 50 years old, Black women. Let's go. We can do this. Okay, so I've got my little notes, as I said. I like to write notes. Losing folks is just, it's a part of our journey. You're not going to make it this far and not have lost somebody. I've lost relationships. I've got family members who won't talk to me. I've lost, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, but how do we recover? What's next? What Mr. Wright would make sure, he wants to make sure that I can hear him laughing. I can hear his laughter in my ear, in my heart, in my soul. I can hear him laughing. I know that he's proud that I would spend even any time talking about how important and precious he was to me. So I've been sad. I've cried my tears, and now it's time for me to seek joy as I continue on my transition to what's next outside of my working life, what's next outside of my working in independent schools. What I want to encourage you to do is start with, and this, none of the things that I will talk about, none of the things that I've gone through, none of the things that I know are original to me. It makes me think about that movie, A Beautiful Mind, right? Like, you can have a beautiful mind, but you don't need an original thought. You just need to be able to remind folks of some of the great wisdom that is already out in this world. There's so many brilliant people. And so, first thing, gratitude. Be grateful for what you have. I'm grateful for my health and my strength. I'm grateful for so many things so many blessings that I have in my life. I can focus on and think about the things that I don't have, that I lost my mom, that Mr. Wright's not here. They weren't going to live forever. I'm not going to live forever. How am I going to make them proud, though, moving forward? I'm going to honor them. I'm going to honor their legacy. The fact that they were here. I'm going to do my best to be the best daughter of Mildred Fane Gibbs. That's just full stop. I have 2 children that I will continue to try to make them proud of me. I will seek help. I have been in therapy before. I hope to get a new therapist once I get all my insurance and all of that stuff taken care of with this new transition. I'm seeking my own personal power. There are things that I came to this earth to do. I heard something the other day that said that even my children chose me. I was reading a book. It was Tiffany Dufu's book called Drop the Ball. And she said that when our children were born, when it was time for them to come to earth, they chose which vessel they wanted to come through. So Brian and Brianna, good choice. Good choice. Hey, I'm doing my best. So that's my looking within, and I'm keep moving forward, step by step. Anything we can do it. A week since losing my friend, getting the word about losing my friend, Mr. Wright, my dear, dear, dear friend, Mr. Arthur Houghton Wright. I'm smiling. I am back. The sun is shining here in Las Vegas. There are clouds, but I know the clouds they're going to go away. The heat's coming. Every time I say it's cold, they go, stop complaining because it's about to be hot. I'm like, it better be hot. That's something my daughter told me. So I'm better. I will see you next week. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel because Black women's lives matter. Black women over 50, our lives matter too. We are important. Our stories, our history, our life that we are living, it's worth talking about. It's not just a young man's game. It's not just anybody else. This is not a slight to other people. One last shout out to Sister Angela Bassett. While you did not win the Oscar, it's very clear that you are loved, that you are not forgotten. For all of my sisters out here who think that you might be forgotten, that you are not standing tall in your power. You're over 50 years old. You're a Black woman. The world does not seem like there's no love for you. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. There is. And it's a special shout out to my sister, Debbie Rice. Debbie, I see you, and I'm going to get you on here. I'm going to get you, me and you. I've got a list of women that I'm going to bring on. Debbie Rice is out here. She has talking about being single, being a Black woman over 50, single. I don't know about you all, but our relationship status has taken up way too much time in my head, and that's one of my subject topics that I'm gonna bring to us. But for now, thank you. Please like and subscribe and share. Let people know that your girl LaRonda is out here on the interweb, as my brother calls it. And until next time, I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.